Progressive Snapshot can save you money based on how you drive and how much you drive. So the safer you drive, the more money you could save. Now, if you didn't hear that because you were looking at your phone while driving, let me say it again. Seriously, put down your phone. That is so unsafe. If you didn't do stuff like use your phone while driving, you could save money with Progressive Snapshot. But saving or not, just put it down. And if you did hear it the first time because you weren't looking at your phone, nice work. You'd love Snapshot from Progressive because it rewards safe drivers. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Snapshot not available in California and North Carolina or from all agents.
This gentleman walked into the branch and he wanted to be added onto his mom's account because she was in the late stages of cancer. We actually have a new service that we're providing with video banking. So we jump on the video call. She looks up at me and she's like, "Sweetheart, I was your third grade teacher." We're here to really help them and connect on a way that other institutions really can't.
Numerica is federally insured by NCUA.
This is Conspirinormal.
All right, everybody, welcome to Conspirinormal. And we are here in the 100-degree heat. Thankfully, we've got a fan and air conditioning right now. But we are sweltering.
We're just getting ready for eternity.
Yeah, I guess. I guess
at least the company will be pretty much the same.
Oh yeah,
the strange realities forever. Yeah,
have a nice reunion.
It's going to be a party. That's for damn sure. But we're here with someone that has been a fan of Conspirinormal for a long time and a supporter of Conspirinormal for a long time, and actually came to the Strange Realities Conference. In fact, I would say that I think he watched every single presentation at the Strange Realities Conference, and that's Vincent Treewell. And Vincent has a podcast that he does called The Weird Part. And we're going to talk about some of the weird stuff tonight and interesting stuff that he talked about on his podcast. So, Vincent, welcome to Conspirinormal.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here. And yes, I did go down to Nashville. And if you watch the saved feed, it's my big bald head in the back, in the middle of just about every presentation.
I think at one point we had a few going, and we had some kind of astronomical alignment going on with your head and Aaron Golias and a few other guys. It was
Chris Sarbido.
Yeah. We were all really shiny too.
It was like the beginning of 2001. You know, Thus Spoke Zarathustra was playing at this.
Supermoon, yes.
Oh man, but yeah, so we're happy to have you on, Vincent. And I think what we're going to start with is talk about kind of how you started doing all this and being into all the weird stuff that we talk about all the time.
Okay, well, I can tell you it's been a lifelong journey. Started when I was really young. I was in love with In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy.
Oh yeah. From
an early age. And even as a kid, I could totally tell the difference between him and Mr. Spock. And I liked him better because he was real. And when I look back, I've watched every old episode of that show on YouTube. There's 100 in some. And I love what he did back then. And I loved it then. I love it now. I wanted to be Leonard Nimoy and just go and in search of these weird things. And what I really liked about him was he wasn't a one-note person. He looked into Bigfoot. He looked into UFOs. He looked into ghosts. He looked into demonic possession. But he also looked into all these other things. He did one on the JFK assassination. He did one on at least a couple on reincarnation, on Amelia Earhart, on just everything under the sun. he did one on the Holy Grail that blew my mind even as a child. And that I always wanted to see something like that. And that's now become a thing in today's world decades later. But it really was kind of, I can't think of another show like that for that time or for a good long time after that. As I got older, then I got into unsolved mysteries, and I got into that pretty hard. And I kind of developed a true crime interest as well, but not just true crime, like this happened and this happened and the news convicted, but like where there's unanswered questions, unsolved crime,
right?
Or crimes that are really weird, that have, okay, maybe we know the facts, but those facts are crazy as hell. Yeah. And what was really going on here? And so that fed that interest. And then I got a third shift job, and I had literally never heard of this guy before, but suddenly I'm being a security guard, walking around all night. And this was not the kind of security where you're like a rent-a-cop. This is the kind of security where you're a night watchman. You're basically doing almost nothing, but you got to be awake and you got to, check in, and you got to be there, but you really don't have anything to do. And my life was graced with Art Bell. And I just listened to him every single night because he's on for hours. And that was just straight feeding my soul. Okay. I mean, he had guests I really loved. He had guests I despised. And I won't hesitate to mention Daniel Brinkley, but we'll move on. I'll take a follow-up on that if you want. But he had good guests, he had bad guests, but he had so many fascinating guests. And he would just talk about these topics, and he covered a lot of ground as well. He would cover just everything. And, that fascinated me. And I'd read so many of the familiar texts from Berlitz and the Invisible Horizons and all of the paperback 1970s and 80s paranormal materials, some of which I may have been disillusioned later in life to find that they might not be the scholarly works I thought they were.
Sure.
I think we can all relate to that.
Yes.
But when you're 12, it's the most amazing thing in the world.
Absolutely. And I don't regret that at all. Not a moment reading that was wasted, because that was fascinating. And then I got, I read Whitley Strieber in high school, and I won't say I suffered a full-on panic attack, but it was quite frightening, and Bud Hopkins and stuff like that, and kind of continued to follow these streams, but also wanted to, keep abreast of the more wide variety of strange things, not just a couple focused points. And then, let me see, I came across, quite by accident, at a bookstore. Barnes & Noble still sells this over the counter, as far as I know, a British magazine called Fortean Times.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind. And I learned about Charles Fort and his whole thing. And they run a hell of a good operation over there. I'm a subscriber just so I can get it on time regularly, but it's well worth reading every month. And they have the perspective that I try to have and that I really like. They're not believers, but they're not debunkers. They're what you'd call a true skeptic. And they'll call something out and explain, no, this is just total BS. This is why. But they'll have a why. Right. They explain stuff. They don't explain it away, And I really, and they're willing to be open and hold things in a gray area that could be not. And I like that. And I think that's a sign of an open mind and intellectual strength. If you have to have a cut and dried answer for everything, that's really not the best, that's not productive, and it's not good for you. I try to get away from that, Then in, I believe it was 2005, a movie called The Mothman Prophecies came out. And it's a good movie. Stars Richard Gere. It's, I give it 2 thumbs up, but it has maybe at most 10% of what's in the book. And having seen the book, having seen the movie, I need to get the book. Plus, I was going to buy anything called The Mothman Prophecies. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah.
You're reeling me in there. And so I got that, and that really blew my mind. And Keel changed my whole way of thinking and looking at this stuff. And he was really, open to all the different levels of weird and types of weirdness, and that maybe they're somehow connected. And that percolated in my mind. And then when I started listening, a couple of years later, started listening to podcasts, I started in the most mainstream podcast possible, which would be This American Life on NPR.
Yeah.
That's pretty mainstream. Yeah.
It's about as mainstream as it gets. Yes. But they hooked me in with a story called The Ghost of Bobby Dunbar. And it was fascinating. No actual ghosts involved, but it was about this kid who goes missing and then he's found, and a rich family says, "Oh, that's our missing son." And a poor family says, "Oh, that's our missing son." And spoiler alert, he goes to the rich family. But DNA may contest that, or it may not. They made a movie with Angelina Jolie about it. And it's an absolutely fascinating story that has so much more than I'm telling right now, that there may have been more than one kid abducted. There's a whole winding story to that. And that got me listening to their podcast. And then they had the podcast Serial, which was unsolved true crime, or at least tried to be. And that got me more into podcasts. And I'm like, man, I'd really like to do something like that. I really like to, but NPR, I mean, they have like 30 people working on that. They have writers, directors, sound engineers. The person speaking isn't even the person who wrote the script. Right. They have researchers and fact checkers. And I'm like, well, how do you get into this? What am I supposed to burn some CDs and mail them to NPR? I mean, So I'm looking around and I'm Googling paranormal podcasts, and I came upon Soraya Eskath and Where'd the Road Go? And right about that same time, I came upon you guys, and I came upon Timothy Renner, Strange Familiars. And I realized, people are just doing this. They're not getting like a whole staff and a whole corporation. They're just like creating this thing and making it happen. And I said, I'm not going to do it today, but I'm going to do it. And, eventually it was far more complicated than I expected. And I got a real serving of not knowing what I was getting into, but it has borne a little bit of fruit and starting to work out. And I mean, in no small part, I couldn't have done it without you guys,
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vincent. We're glad to have you join the club too. And you've also been doing the liner notes, I guess, for Where Did the Road Go too. So we should point that out as well. If you listen to that podcast, Vincent does all that.
Which is, that's a real honor. And I listened to it once for fun, and I sit down and really listen to it and like try to have all the references in there in case people want to look stuff up. And I get a kick out of that. I love it. Awesome. It's kind of my story and where I showed up. Well, then I guess we get to the pandemic hits, and I see the 2020 Strange Realities only online, and I attend that online, and that reeled me in further and made connections with a lot of other people. And so that's why I had to be in Nashville last year and have to come back this year.
You got on the bus to come to Nashville too.
That's awesome.
I learned I do not regret that for 1 second. Totally do it again in a heartbeat. There were different reasons for that, including I didn't have the driver's